In a bustling grocery store, a poor single mother tries to buy milk for her little daughter. A cashier humiliates her when she cannot afford it. A wealthy man nearby observes silently. The moment turns tense when the mother is forced to return the milk, but she responds with calm dignity, leaving the scene heavy with emotion and a hint of something unexpected about to unfold. You people always come in here with nothing in your wallets, wasting our time. The cashier's voice cracked through the hum of the grocery store like a whip. Heads turned, curious eyes lingering on the scene. The fluorescent lights flickered above the cramped aisles, throwing a cold, harsh glow over the moment. At the counter stood a young woman, clothes plain and worn, hair tied back in haste, with fatigue etched into her eyes. Her trembling hands clutched a carton of milk. Behind her, a little girl no older than 6 held the edge of her mother's faded scarf, her wide eyes full of both hunger and innocence. The cashier, a tall man with a sneer that curled his lip, leaned on the register with arrogant impatience. He tapped his fingers against the counter as if each second wasted on her was an insult to his very existence. "If you can't pay, don't bother picking it up," he said louder, making sure everyone around could hear. Some shoppers paused, their carts, whispers passing between them. A few shook their heads with disapproval, not at the cruelty, but at the sight of the mother's struggle. Society's silent judgment pressed on her shoulders heavier than the bag she wished she could carry home. The woman swallowed her pride. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her daughter tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, I'm thirsty." Her heart ached. She bent down, placed her hand gently on her daughter's cheek, and forced a smile that carried all the strength she had left. Then, with deliberate calm, she set the milk carton back onto the counter. The sound of its soft but final echoed louder than the insults hurled at her. A Faza man in a tailored suit watched from the line nearby. His presence was commanding without effort. His cufflinks gleamed under the store's dull light. People gave him space without knowing why, sensing authority in the way he stood. His gaze stayed fixed on the woman and her child, studying every movement, every word unspoken. The cashier smirked, satisfied with his small victory. "That's right. Put it back. Maybe come again when you actually have money." He pushed the milk aside with a dismissive shove, as if erasing her existence. The mother straightened her posture. Her voice, steady and low, finally broke the silence. "You may measure me by what's in my wallet, but one day you'll learn that value isn't always counted in coins." Her words sliced the arrogance hanging in the air. The room fell still for a moment, caught between disbelief and discomfort. Even the cashier blinked, unsettled by her calm defiance. The man in the suit tilted his head, intrigued. His lips curved slightly, but not in mockery. Something had shifted. The woman took her daughter's hand and turned toward the door, dignity radiating from every quiet step. The crowd parted as she passed, no one daring to stop her. The child looked back at the counter once, her eyes lingering on the milk that was no longer theirs. As the door swung open, the man in the suit whispered under his breath, almost as if speaking to himself, "She doesn't even know who's watching." And with that, the chapter ended, leaving only the question of why a millionaire would be so captivated by a poor mother returning a simple carton of milk. The glass door swung shut behind her, leaving the harsh lights of the grocery store behind. Outside, the night was cool, a soft breeze carrying the faint smell of rain from distant clouds. Streetlights flickered weakly over the cracked sidewalk. The woman held her daughter's hand, steadying her with each small step, though her own heart felt heavier than her feet. She did not cry, not here. Tears would only comfort the ones who wished to see her broken. Instead, she breathed deeply, pulling her child closer, letting silence shield her from the echoes of ridicule she had just endured. Her daughter looked up with innocent confusion. "Mama, why didn't we take the milk?" Her chest tightened. She bent down, brushed a strand of hair from the little girl's forehead, and whispered with a fragile smile, "Because sometimes we must give back today, so tomorrow can come." The girl didn't understand, but she nodded, as children do when they trust completely. Behind them, unnoticed, the man in the suit stepped out of the store. His polished shoes struck the pavement with quiet authority. He did not call after her, nor rush to offer assistance. Instead, he watched, observed, followed at a distance that gave her privacy yet kept her within his sight. His sharp eyes studied the way she walked, her posture upright despite poverty pressing down like chains. For most, she would have been invisible, a face among millions. To him, she was unforgettable. The woman reached a narrow alley where the buzz of the city softened. Rusted fences framed the path, and walls painted with old graffiti whispered forgotten stories. She entered a modest apartment building, its bricks weathered, its windows glowing faintly with the dim light of worn-out lamps. The man paused across the street, blending into the shadows of a lamppost. He was not a man easily hidden, but wealth carried its own cloak. People seldom questioned the presence of someone who looked untouchable. From inside, faint sounds filtered through a cracked window, the clatter of dishes, the soft hum of a lullaby. He pictured her preparing a meager meal, stretching scraps into sustenance, yet filling the room with warmth her child could feel. He leaned back against the post, recalling her words at the store. "Value isn't always counted in coins." The sentence replayed like a challenge, as though it were aimed at him directly. He, a man who measured life by numbers, deals, and profit, found himself unsettled by her defiance. Hours passed. Lights in the building dimmed, one by one, until only hers remained. The man checked his watch but didn't leave. Something rooted him there, something unexplainable. Inside, the mother tucked her daughter into a thin bed. The child clutched a stuffed rabbit whose seams had loosened with love. She kissed her forehead, whispering prayers only the two of them would ever hear. When the girl drifted into sleep, the mother sat alone by the window. Her reflection stared back at her through the glass, tired yet unbroken. She held an old notebook in her lap, its pages filled with scribbles, ideas, and lists of dreams too costly to chase. She read through them slowly, as though reminding herself that hope could survive even in silence. Across the street, the man's jaw tightened. For years he had seen countless people beg, plead, or mask their hunger with desperation. But this woman, she refused to bow. She endured humiliation with a grace that unsettled arrogance. He whispered to himself, almost amused, pride in poverty. Or is it something more? A gust of wind tugged at his suit jacket, reminding him he didn't belong there. Yet as he turned to leave, his eyes flicked back to the window one last time. The mother had taken the milk carton from her memory, the weight of its absence pressing against her. She opened her notebook and, in shaky handwriting, wrote just one line across. A blank page. "One day she will never know hunger." The man froze. Though he couldn't see the words, the conviction in her eyes as she wrote them pierced through the glass like fire through fog. In that moment, his curiosity transformed into something sharper, deeper. He no longer followed her out of idle interest. Something about her resilience demanded action. He walked away into the night, his mind racing faster than his polished steps. Yet even as the city swallowed him, her image lingered, a quiet storm threatening to unravel his carefully built world. And he knew, without reason, that this was only the beginning. The morning sun crept through glass towers, gilding the city in gold. In a high-rise apartment where marble floors swallowed every footstep, the man in the suit sat alone at his dining table. Breakfast was laid out with precision: fresh fruit, warm bread, coffee steaming in fine china, but his appetite was absent. his eyes weren't on the food. They lingered on a memory. A boy barefoot, skinny, waiting outside a shop while his mother argued with a clerk who mocked her for not having enough money. The boy's fists clenched, not from hunger, but from shame. He remembered the way his mother lowered her eyes, the way the world measured her by coins she didn't have. He blinked hard, forcing the image away. That boy had grown, fought, clawed his way into wealth. He had promised himself never to feel powerless again. And yet, watching the woman at the store last night had cracked something open he thought was long-sealed dot across the city. The single mother stirred. Her apartment walls were thin, every noise of neighbors spilling into her space. But she had learned to make silence her own. She woke before her daughter, tidying the little room, folding clothes that had lost their color long ago but were still treated with care. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. She placed half a slice of bread on a plate, saving the other half for her child. When the little girl awoke, rubbing her sleepy eyes, the mother greeted her with a smile that made hunger vanish at least for a while. "Mama, do I go to school?" "Today?" the girl asked. The mother hesitated. The fee was overdue. The teacher had already warned her. But she brushed her daughter's hair back and nodded. "Yes, my love. Today and every day." She couldn't let her daughter believe that. Dreams had a price tag. Later, on the crowded bus, whispers rose around her. Two women in fine coats sat behind, their voices cutting sharp. "See that one? Always struggling. Shouldn't people like her learn their place?" "Exactly. Bringing children into this world with nothing to offer them. Shameful." The mother kept her eyes forward. Her daughter squeezed her hand, sensing the cruelty in the words. She leaned down, whispering so softly only her daughter could hear. "Let their words be like smoke. You see it, but you don't let it touch your skin." The girl nodded, though her small hands trembled. Miles away, in a boardroom lined with glass and power, the millionaire sat through a meeting. Men in tailored suits droned on about mergers, profits, expansion. Numbers filled the room like oxygen, yet his mind wandered back to the alley, the notebook in her hands, the fire in her eyes when she wrote. He gripped his pen tighter, scribbling across the margin of his notes. "Value isn't always counted in coins." His assistant leaned over, whispering, "Sir, are you all right?" He nodded curtly, his voice clipped. "Continue." But his thoughts refused to obey. By evening, as the sun dipped and shadows stretched long, the mother returned home carrying only a small bag. Inside were simple groceries, enough to last 2 days if stretched with care. She found her daughter humming, drawing pictures on scrap paper. Smiling, she kissed her forehead and began preparing dinner with the quiet grace of someone who turned scarcity into ritual. She didn't know that outside, a familiar figure lingered again. The millionaire's car idled at the corner, tinted windows shielding him from curious eyes. He told himself it was coincidence, that he just happened to pass by, but he knew better. Something tethered him here. Watching her, he saw not poverty, but resilience. Not weakness, but strength. And in her little girl's laughter, muffled by walls, he heard an echo of the boy he once was. For the first time in years, his empire of wealth felt hollow, and though he had every reason to drive away, he stayed, staring at the building as though it held the answers to questions he never dared ask. The night deepened, and with it, his decision formed, though he could not yet name it. All he knew was this: fate had whispered once, and he would not ignore it twice. The skyscrapers that pierced the morning sky seemed unshakable, but inside one of them, a man sat restless. The millionaire leaned against his office window, staring down at the traffic below. From this height, cars looked like ants, people like shadows. It was the perspective he had earned: distance, control, superiority. But today, All he saw was her face at the grocery store, the way she set the milk carton down, the way she walked out with dignity while others mocked. He exhaled sharply, pressing his palm to the glass. Why does this stranger live in my thoughts? Behind him, his board of directors debated investments, their words a blur. One of them, a sharp-tongued investor, chuckled. The poor are predictable. They'll take whatever scraps you throw at them and thank you for it. That's why business always wins. The words cut deeper than expected. He remembered being the boy at the shop, watching his mother bow her head to insults. He clenched, his jaw, his pen snapping between his fingers. "Excuse me," he said abruptly, leaving the room before anyone could question him. Meanwhile, across the city, the single mother walked her daughter to school. The building stood tall but tired, its paint peeling, its windows lined with smudges of countless little hands. She held her daughter's small hand with pride. Though worry weighed on her chest. At the office near the entrance, the principal, a man with sharp glasses and a sharper tongue, stopped her. "Mrs. Carter," he began coldly, "we've reminded you twice about the overdue tuition fees. Education isn't free. If you cannot keep up, perhaps you should reconsider her enrollment." Her daughter's grip tightened, fear in her eyes. The mother's heart ached, but her voice remained steady. "She belongs here. Her mind is bright, her future brighter. Don't punish her for what I lack," the principal scoffed. "The world doesn't run on ideals. It runs on payments." He slid a paper across the desk, a notice of suspension if the balance wasn't cleared. The mother folded the paper quietly, her expression calm though her spirit screamed inside. She refused to let her daughter see defeat in her eyes. Kneeling, she smoothed her child's hair and said softly, "Go on, learn. That is something no one can take from you." The girl hesitated, then nodded, walking into the classroom with a brave little smile. The mother stood alone in the hallway, clutching the paper until her knuckles whitened. Around her, other parents passed with judgment in their glances, whispers trailing like smoke. She straightened her shoulders and walked out, each step an act of resistance. Unbeknownst to her, the millionaire's car rolled to a slow stop across the street. He had come without knowing why, driven by something heavier than logic. Through tinted glass, he saw her leaving the school, her eyes fixed forward, her stride unbroken despite the weight she carried. He whispered to himself, "She walks as if the world cannot bend her." How? That question burned in him all day. In the quiet of his office, in the noise of his meetings, in the silence of his penthouse at night, it haunted him. Later that evening, he sat in his study, surrounded by books he never opened and paintings he barely noticed. Wealth filled the room, yet it felt hollow. He poured himself a glass of wine, but the taste was bitter. On his desk lay an old photograph, his mother, tired but smiling, holding him as a boy. He traced the edges with his finger, his throat tight. She had died before she could see what he built, and yet he wondered, would she have been proud of the man he had become? Or would she have looked at him the way the woman at the store had looked at the cashier, calm, unbroken, quietly condemning arrogance? For the first time in years, the mask of power slipped. He set the glass down, his reflection in the window. Staring back at him, not a titan of industry, but a boy who once knew hunger. Across the city, the single mother tucked her daughter into bed. She whispered stories of courage, of queens who rose from nothing, of heroes who had nothing but still gave everything. The child fell asleep with hope in her eyes. The mother sat by the window, her notebook in hand. She wrote slowly, carefully, "I will not let the world decide her worth." At that same hour, the millionaire, in his glass tower, whispered into the silence, "She doesn't even know how much she's already changing me." And though they were miles apart, the weight of destiny pulled them closer, like two stars circling an unseen gravity. The rain came without warning. It hammered against the city with a fury that blurred windows and drowned the sound of footsteps. The mother hurried down the cracked sidewalks, her daughter wrapped in a thin coat beside her. The umbrella she carried had long since broken, its bent frame useless, so she shielded her child with her own body. By the time they reached the diner where she worked, her clothes clung to her skin, her hair dripping into her eyes. Inside, the smell of coffee and grease greeted her. She tied her apron quickly, rushing behind the counter. The manager, a stout man with restless eyes, glared at her lateness. "You're 10 minutes behind," she bowed her head, breathless. The bus was delayed. The rain. Excuses. "Don't keep customers happy," he snapped. "You're lucky I haven't replaced you already." She swallowed the words that rose in her throat. Jobs were scarce. Dignity was a luxury she could not afford here. So she nodded, forcing out a quiet, "Yes, sir." The day blurred in motion, refilling coffee, carrying trays, ignoring whispers of regulars who mocked her threadbare shoes. Her daughter waited in the corner booth with crayons, quietly drawing castles on napkins, her presence both a burden and a blessing. When the last plate was cleared, the manager pulled her aside. "Rent's due, isn't it? I can see it in your face. Let me be blunt. If you can't handle longer shifts, I'll find someone who can. Desperation doesn't pay bills, but it keeps people replaceable." His words cut, each syllable dipped in cruelty. Her fist tightened at her side, but she exhaled slowly, steadying her voice. "Do what you must. But remember, even desperation has a line it will not cross." He sneered, unconcerned, and walked away. Across the city, in a glass-walled restaurant, the millionaires sat at a table surrounded by associates. Laughter filled the air, crystal glasses clinking. Deals were being celebrated, millions exchanged with ease. But his gaze was distant, his smile hollow. The man beside him nudged his arm. "Lighten up. You won, again. Isn't that what matters?" The millionaire swirled the wine in his glass, watching the liquid catch the candlelight. "Winning? Does it matter when you've forgotten why you fight?" He thought of her again, the woman in the store, the child's wide eyes, the notebook by the window. They lingered like ghosts at the edges of his empire. His associate leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Listen, the poor will always struggle. That's the order of things. We can't fix everyone. Best we do is keep climbing, yes?" Something inside him snapped. He set the glass down hard, startling those around him. His voice was low, but sharp. "What if climbing means forgetting where you came from? What then?" The table fell silent. Eyes darted toward him, unsure if he spoke in jest. But he did not explain. Instead, he stood, adjusting his jacket, and walked out into the night, rain soaking his suit within seconds. He welcomed it, the cold reminding him he was still human. Elsewhere, the mother sat at her kitchen table, bills spread before her like enemies on a battlefield. Her daughter slept nearby, curled in blankets too thin for the storm outside. She pressed her palms into her face, silent, tears slipping through her fingers. Her notebook lay open beside her. She scribbled one line again and again until the page tore. I will not fail her. Her chest burned with frustration. She had bent, endured, suffered quietly, but now something inside threatened to break. And miles away, in a penthouse wrapped in glass, the millionaire stared at his reflection in the rain-streaked window. His empire stretched below, but it felt meaningless. He whispered into the storm, as if speaking to the ghost of his mother. "I swore I'd never go back, but maybe I've already lost myself by leaving it behind." The rain roared louder, drowning the city in its song. Two souls, divided by walls of wealth and poverty, sat at the edge of breaking, unaware that destiny was already weaving their paths toward collision. And when they collided, Neither life would remain the same. The storm had cleared by morning, leaving puddles glittering across the city like broken mirrors. The mother hurried down the street, her daughter's hand tucked in hers. Today was different. She wasn't headed to work or school. She had an interview at a small office downtown, a chance at a steady job that could change everything. Her clothes were pressed as neatly as she could manage. Her shoes shined though worn. She carried her notebook tucked inside her bag, her quiet source of strength. Her daughter skipped beside her, humming softly, unaware of the weight resting on her mother's shoulders. Inside a sleek building lined with glass, the millionaire adjusted his tie. Meetings stacked his day, one bleeding into the next. His assistant read out the schedule, her voice efficient. But he wasn't listening. His thoughts kept drifting, circling a face, a voice. A carton of milk returned with dignity by some unseen design. Their paths converged. The mother entered the lobby, clutching her resume. She paused, overwhelmed by the marble floors, the polished steel, the sheer weight of wealth pressing down on her. For a moment, she considered turning back. Her daughter tugged her sleeve, whispering, "Mama, you can do this." Strength returned to her spine. She walked to the reception desk, heart pounding. At that same moment, the millionaire stepped out of the elevator. His presence was magnetic, people parting instinctively as he passed. His eyes swept the lobby and froze. Her. She stood at the desk, her daughter beside her, both out of place and yet unshaken. Recognition struck like lightning. He slowed, watching as she spoke softly to the receptionist, offering her resume with trembling hands. The receptionist frowned. "This position requires qualifications you don't have. I'm sorry, ma'am." The words stung, sharp and dismissive. The mother lowered her gaze briefly, then lifted it again, calm. Qualifications can be learned. Determination cannot. The receptionist blinked, taken aback by her composure. The millionaire stepped forward. His voice carried authority, quiet yet commanding. "Give her the interview." The receptionist's mouth fell open. "Sir, I said," he repeated. Eyes fixed on the mother. "Give her the interview." Gasps rippled through the lobby as whispers spread. The receptionist scrambled to obey. The mother turned slowly, her eyes locking on his. Recognition flickered. She remembered the store, the man in the suit who had watched silently. Now here he was, standing with power dripping from every word. Their gazes clashed, the air between them thick with unspoken history. Her eyes held. No gratitude, only suspicion. She did not bow, did not thank him. She simply asked, steady, "Why?" The question hung heavy. He hesitated, then spoke softly, so only she could hear. "Because I know what it feels like to be measured by nothing but coins." Her breath caught. For the first time, his mask slipped. She saw not just a man of wealth, but a boy once scarred by the same wound she bore. Still, she did not smile. Her daughter's hand tightened in hers, grounding her. "If I earn this," she said firmly, "it will be because of my work. Not your pity." He nodded slowly, respect flickering in his eyes. "Then prove it. Show them." For a long moment, they stood in silence, two worlds colliding in a single glance. Around them, the lobby buzzed with whispers, but none dared interrupt. Finally, she turned toward the receptionist, her voice calm. "Schedule the interview. I'll be here." She walked away, her daughter skipping beside her, head held high. The millionaire watched, something unexplainable tightening in his chest. His assistant approached nervously. "Sir, what just happened?" He didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the woman's retreating figure. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar, hope tangled with fear. The storm outside had passed, but inside, another had just begun. The conference room smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. A long glass table stretched across. The space lined with men and women in sharp suits. Their eyes were cold, their pens ready to judge before a word was spoken. At the far end of the table sat the single mother. Her daughter waited outside with a receptionist, drawing on scraps of paper, unaware of the silent war happening in this room. The panel shifted papers, scanning her thin resume. One of them, a woman with a clipped tone, spoke first. "You have no formal degree. Your work experience is limited. Why should we consider you for this position when there are dozens more qualified?" The mother folded her hands in her lap, steadying her breath. "Because qualifications are skills. Skills can be taught. But character cannot. Dedication cannot. Hunger for change cannot." A man at the table smirked, leaning back in his chair. "That sounds poetic, but businesses don't run on poetry. What can you give us that others can't?" Her voice sharpened, quiet but piercing. "I know what it means to go without, to stretch every resource to make the impossible possible. That kind of survival is innovation in its purest form." The panel exchanged glances, some amused, some dismissive. At the back of the room, unnoticed, the millionaire stood behind a tinted glass partition. He had insisted on watching, though he hadn't revealed his connection. His arms were folded, his expression unreadable. Every word she spoke struck something deep within him. The questioning continued, sharper now, each member trying to chip away at her composure. They asked about systems she'd never heard of, terms she didn't understand. The smirks grew, arrogance filling the room, but she never wavered. When she didn't know, she admitted it. When challenged, she drew from life instead of books. "I may not know your software," she said at one point, "but I know how to manage 5 bills with the money for 2 and still keep hope alive in a child's eyes. If I can do that, I can learn anything you teach me here." Silence followed. Not all were impressed, but none could deny the weight of her words. From the glass partition, the millionaire's chest tightened. He wanted to step in, to silence their arrogance, but he held back. No, he thought. This is her fight. Let her win it her way. One final question came. The clipped-voiced woman leaned forward, pen tapping against her notepad. "Tell us, Mrs. Carter, why do you want this job? Don't tell us about your daughter. Don't tell us about poverty. Tell us why you belong here." The mother inhaled slowly. Her hands trembled beneath the table, but her eyes rose, steady and unbroken. "Because I refuse to let the world decide my worth," she said. "Every door has been shut in my face, every coin counted against me, but I am still here. Still. Standing. And if you open this door, I will walk through it, not for charity, not for pity, but because I have earned it with every step that brought me here." The room fell silent. For the first time, the arrogance cracked. Even those who doubted her could not deny the force of her conviction. Behind the glass, the millionaire exhaled, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "She doesn't need me," he realized. She never did. The interview ended with polite words, neutral. Faces hiding judgment. She gathered her papers, thanked them calmly, and walked out, her dignity intact. In the lobby, her daughter ran to her, wrapping arms around her waist. "Mama, did you win?" She knelt, hugging her close. "We'll see, my love, but I spoke the truth, and the truth is never wasted." From across the lobby, the millionaire stepped forward, his eyes meeting hers briefly. He said nothing, offered nothing, only a nod, subtle but filled with respect. She returned the nod, no smile, no gratitude, just recognition. Two worlds colliding, not in wealth or poverty, but in dignity, and both knew this was only the beginning of something larger than either of them could control. The conference room door shut with a hollow click. Papers shuffled, pens scratched. The air, thick with judgment, vibrated with unspoken bias. "She's unqualified. said one man, his suit too tight around his arrogance. We'd be lowering standards if we considered her. Another woman snorted softly. Single mothers like her, they always bring personal drama into the workplace. Do we really want that liability? A younger member of the panel hesitated, glancing at the closed door she had just walked through. But you heard her. She has fire. She has resilience. Isn't that the kind of spirit this company lacks right now? The older man shot him a look that silenced him instantly. Resilience doesn't pay dividends. Experience does. From behind the tinted glass, the millionaire listened. His jaw clenched as he watched them pick apart her life like scraps on a table. He had promised himself he would stay silent, remain invisible, but every word was a blade against his restraint. She talked a good game, the clipped-voice woman said coolly, but at the end of the day, we need someone polished. Someone who won't embarrass us in front of clients. Can you picture her at a board meeting? Laughter rippled around the table low, poisonous, dismissive. The millionaire's hand curled into a fist at his side. For years he had trusted. This panel allowed them to sift candidates. He thought they sought excellence. But what he saw now wasn't a pursuit of talent, it was prejudice. Cloaked in professionalism. One voice broke through, hesitant yet bold. The younger man again. With respect, sir. Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones polished by privilege. Sometimes they're the ones who've been tempered by hardship. That woman? She reminded me of my mother. Silence. The panel shifted uncomfortably. No one wanted to be the first to argue with sentiment. The clipped-voice woman rolled her pen across the table. We'll put it to a vote tomorrow. The meeting dissolved, heels clicking, suits brushing past each other with calculated indifference. The millionaire stayed where he was, staring at the empty chair she had occupied. Meanwhile, she walked home with her daughter, the city's neon lights flickering like uncertain stars above them. Mama, why were they looking at you like that? Her daughter asked, her small hand clutching tightly. The mother forced a smile, though her chest ached. Because sometimes, baby, people see what they want to see. But it doesn't change who we are. Her daughter tilted her head. But I saw you. You were brave. The words wrapped around her like a fragile shield. Brave. She had not felt brave. She had felt exposed, naked before their scorn. But to her daughter, she had been a warrior. That night, as her daughter slept, she sat at the kitchen table, staring at the worn bills spread before her. Rent, electricity, school supplies. Numbers that refused to stretch. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from exhaustion. And yet, somewhere inside, a flame still burned. I will not beg for survival, she thought. I will carve it, even if they close every door. Back at the office, whispers spread. The receptionist who had watched her daughter draw pictures in the waiting room told others how composed the mother had been. The security guard mentioned how she walked out with her head high, even after hours of questioning. It wasn't much, just fragments of respect murmured in hallways, but whispers have power. And the whispers reached ears they were never meant to reach. The millionaire heard them too. That night, he sat alone in his penthouse, city lights painting his glass walls. Her words replayed in his mind, because I refused to let the world decide my worth. For a man who had measured worth in stocks, buildings, and contracts, those words unraveled something. He realized he had been part of the system that built walls, so high people like her never had a chance to climb. And he wondered, perhaps for the first time, if his wealth meant anything at all if he didn't use it to tear those walls down. The next morning, as the panel gathered again, he made a decision, not yet to reveal himself, not yet to intervene, but to wait just a little longer, to see if they were capable of seeing her worth without his shadow, because if they couldn't, he knew exactly what he would do, and it would shake the entire company to its core. The boardroom buzzed with quiet tension the next morning. Coffee cups steamed, papers rustled. The panel sat straighter than usual, their eyes sharper. It was decision day. "She's not a fit," one man declared. His tone was casual, as if the outcome had already been written in stone. "She doesn't have the polish, the training. We'd be setting ourselves back if we approved her." The clipped voice woman nodded briskly. "Agreed. This company thrives on image as much as skill. She has neither." The younger man hesitated, his pen tapping nervously. "With respect, image can be taught. But what she showed yesterday, integrity, courage, that can't be bought." "Integrity doesn't close deals," the older man shot back. "We need results, not sob stories." Laughter flickered across the table, quick and cruel. Behind the tinted glass, the millionaire leaned forward. His silence had stretched long enough. He had given them a chance to prove they could see past their arrogance. They had failed. He pushed the door open. The sound was small, but it carried like thunder. Head snapped toward him, eyes widening. As recognition hit, "Mr. Sterling?" The clipped voice woman stammered. She rose halfway from her chair, her confidence suddenly fragile. We didn't know you were." "That much is clear," he said, his voice low but edged with steel. The room shifted. Postures straightened, jaws clenched. The mask of control slipped from every face. He walked to the head of the table, each step measured, deliberate. When he spoke again, his tone was calm but laced with quiet fire. "I listened yesterday. I listened again this morning, and what I heard disgusted me." Silence. No one dared breathe too loud. "You sit here, cloaked in suits and self-importance, and you speak of image as if it were the soul of this company. But image is nothing if it hides rot underneath." The older man swallowed, his throat dry. "Sir, we were simply judging," Sterling cut in sharply. "Not on merit, not on potential, but on circumstance, on scars, on the weight of poverty. And you did it with laughter in your voices." The younger man looked down ashamed. The others shifted uncomfortably, their arrogance fraying like worn cloth. The clipped voice woman tried to recover. "We were only maintaining standards, sir." "Surely you wouldn't want—" "I built this company on standards," he interrupted. "Again, but not yours, mine, and my standard is this: talent comes from anywhere. Dignity belongs to everyone. And if you can't see that, then you are the liability here, not her." A stunned hush blanketed the room. He let the weight of his words sink in before continuing. "The woman you mocked yesterday? She has more strength in her than half this table combined. She doesn't need your pity. She doesn't even need this job. But this company needs her." The panel stared, their authority stripped bare. For the first time, they looked less like gatekeepers and more like guilty children caught in a lie. Sterling straightened, his eyes sweeping the table. "The decision is no longer yours. Effective immediately, she is hired. And more than that, she will be given the resources she needs to grow here. Consider this non-negotiable." The clipped voice woman's face flushed. "But, sir, one more word," he said, voice flat as iron, "and you'll be the one looking for work tomorrow." The words dropped like a hammer. No one spoke. Again, he left them sitting in stunned silence, the echo of his footsteps trailing power behind him. Meanwhile, across town, the mother sat at her kitchen table, smoothing the creases of her daughter's school uniform. She had no idea what storm had broken in that boardroom. Her daughter ran in, clutching the picture she had drawn at the office yesterday. A small figure with messy hair holding hands with a taller one, a son above them. "Look, Mama," she said proudly, "it's us. And the son means we'll be okay." The mother hugged her close, her eyes stinging. She didn't know that, even Now the sun was rising higher than she could imagine, and tomorrow, when the call came, it wouldn't just change her life, it would change the company forever. The phone rang just after sunrise. Its shrill cry cut through the stillness of the kitchen, where the mother sat hunched over the table with a cup of cheap coffee. Her daughter still slept, curled in the safety of dreams. She stared at the phone, fear and hope tangling inside her chest. Calls at this hour were rarely good news. She almost didn't answer, almost, but her hand trembled forward, pressing the green button. Double quotes, Mrs. Carter? The clipped voice woman. The mother braced herself. Here it comes. We've reviewed your interview. Effective immediately, we would like to offer you the position. The words hung in the air, sharp and unreal. For a heartbeat, she couldn't breathe. You? You're offering me the job? Yes, came the tight reply. You'll begin Monday. Full benefits, training provided. Details will follow in an email. The mother's hand covered her mouth. Tears blurred the kitchen into watercolor. Her daughter stirred in the next room, rubbing her eyes, sensing something had shifted. Thank you, the mother whispered, her voice breaking. Thank you. The call ended, but its echo remained. Across town, in a high-rise office bathed in morning light, the millionaire set his own phone down. He had listened to the call in silence, his presence hovering like an unseen hand behind the decision. He hadn't revealed himself. He hadn't needed to. She would never know that it was his voice, his authority, that had stripped the arrogance from the panel. She would never know that her job offer was sealed the moment he walked into that boardroom, and that was the way. He wanted it, because her victory wasn't his to claim, it was hers. By midday, whispers spread through the company like wildfire. A single mother had been hired against the panel's resistance. Some scoffed. Some rolled their eyes. But many quietly, carefully admired it. She stood her ground, one receptionist said. She didn't flinch, murmured a junior staffer. Maybe she's exactly what we need, another admitted. The arrogance that once echoed in those halls began to falter. Walls of superiority cracked under the weight of something stronger, respect. That evening, the mother walked her daughter home from school, the air cool and golden. Mama, her daughter said, skipping beside her. Did the sun come out for us today? The mother laughed softly, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Yes, baby, the sun came out. She didn't tell her about the phone call. Not yet. She wanted to hold it close a little longer, savoring the warmth before she shared it. At home, she cooked a small dinner, simple, but enough. They ate together at the table, her daughter chattering about crayons and storybooks, while the mother let herself smile without restraint. For the first time in a long time, tomorrow didn't feel like a threat. Tomorrow felt like a promise. In the penthouse high above the city, the millionaire stood at his window, watching the same sunset paint the skyline. His reflection stared back at him, sharp suit, sharp jaw, sharp loneliness. He thought of her words, I refuse to let the world decide my worth. For a man who had once measured worth in dollars and buildings, those words lingered like scripture. He raised a glass of water, not champagne, not scotch, just water. Plain, unadorned. He lifted it slightly toward the horizon, a quiet toast. To dignity, he murmured, and to revolutions that begin quietly. The story did not end there. In the weeks that followed, the mother stepped into her new role. With the same steady courage she had carried through every storm. She learned, she stumbled. She rose again, and little by little, her presence began to shift the air around her. Co-workers softened. Gatekeepers faltered. Even the panel that had dismissed her could not deny the impact she brought, not because she was flawless, but because she was unbreakable. And somewhere behind it all, the millionaire continued to watch, not as a savior, not as a benefactor, But as a witness to the quiet revolution he had almost missed, he didn't need credit. He didn't need gratitude at all. He needed was the knowledge that for once he had not stood on the side of arrogance. He had chosen dignity, and dignity, he realized, was the greatest wealth of all. That night, the mother tucked her daughter into bed. The little girl looked up at her and whispered, "Mama, one day I'll be brave like you." The mother kissed her forehead, smiling through tears. "You already are." The room fell quiet, but in that silence, a new world was being built, one where poverty did not define worth, where dignity outshone arrogance, and where justice, though late, still arrived.